Hi guys, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be showing you how I built the floor for my new wood-fired sauna. And this is a pretty straightforward job, but I think this is going to be an interesting video. You can see the timber that I'm using here is 4x2, and we've also got some plywood there which is going to create the surface of the floor. So let's get on with the first part of the job, which is cutting the top and bottom rail. Now these are exactly the same size, and this is a 4.8 meter length of timber, so I'm just going to literally cut this straight in half. Just double check there to make sure that I'm right in the middle. We'll chop that in half and then we'll just put them to one side. And what we want to do here before we start doing anything else is we want to mark these out. And the reason for this is when we put our joists in, we want to know exactly where our joists are going. So by marking things out together like this, our top and bottom rail, we know that the joists are going to be landing in exactly the same place on either side when we actually start building the frame itself. Okay, so this is very simple, 400mm centers, and I'm just doing a little line and a little cross on one side of the line so we know where the timber's going to go. So you can see that here, we've got our line, our crosses on the other side of the line. What that means is when we separate these, so these could be a couple of meters apart, we're not going to accidentally go on the wrong side of the line at one side compared to the other. It's just going to mean that everything works perfectly and everything lands exactly where it should. Okay, so the next job is cutting the joists themselves, and again these are all the same length, so it's just a case of running them through the chop saw. Obviously if you don't have a chop saw you can do these by hand. The advantage with the chop saw though is you know that the cuts are going to be nice and straight, so I just prefer to use the chop saw for this rather than struggling with the hand saw. Okay, so now we're going to get our marked up timber there, we're going to separate them apart and then we can just line our joists up, and as I mentioned before, this just makes this part of the job really easy because we know exactly where the joists are going to go. We have the marks, we have the crosses, and as you can see, just laying them in place, we're starting to form the basic layout of this frame. Very, very straightforward. This is really not complicated. As long as you just do things in the right order and just don't, miss important steps like the marking out. Okay, so once this is laid out in position, I'm going to add two fixings to either end. For this, personally, I'm using the nail gun. However, if you don't have a nail gun, by all means, just manually nail this, or you could screw it. Either way, you just want two solid fixings in either end, and that's going to hold it nice and secure. Okay, so you can see here that I've also added a row of noggins. This is at 1200 center from that right hand side. So that means when we put the ply sheet on, it's going to land straight on that row of noggins there. Following this, I'm going to take it all over to the gravel grid base that I constructed in the previous video. I'll leave a link to that in the top of the screen there. And I'm just going to lay the floor down and I'm just going to kind of eye it in really. I didn't even really measure this. I just moved it around until I thought it was in the best position. So my goal here was to have it fairly even all the way around. I wanted a nice pathway between the sauna and the garden room. I wanted some decent access around the back and reasonable access on that left hand side. Okay, so once I was happy with that, I just got my level out to give it a little check, just to make sure that we were something like. Now, the gravel grid base was already quite level, but we are going to be able to make this absolutely perfect because we're raising this up on these little things. So these are pedestals. I got these from Amazon. They're really sort of robust, strong, and designed specifically for this purpose. So they're really good for, propping up decks, propping up sheds, small garden rooms, and obviously in this case I'm going to be using it to prop up my sauna. So what we can do with these is we can put them under each corner, just get it something like level, so you've got to kind of wind these up to the right height, you put them under, and then as you can see I'm just going to check that with a level, and this is reasonably close as it is now, so I'm quite happy with that. Florence came along, had a little look as well, she seems pretty pleased. And then it's just a case of installing all the rest of them. So you've just got to wind these up as you go. So any little imperfections in the gravel, I can just wind the foot down so it's nice and secure on the floor. And then following that, I just went around and added a couple of screws into each one of the pedestals. So I had 20 of these, I believe. So it was 7 aside, and then there were 6 left, which I used down the middle. And that just made this really secure. So there's absolutely no bouncing this after this. Okay, so there we go. You can see me screwing now. You don't really need to see me doing all the screws, so we can move on to the next bit. And this was kind of an additional extra. This is not necessarily something that has to be done, but for me, I wanted to do this This is some rubber matting that I'm using, and I'm going to use this to place underneath the pedestals. And the reason for that is I wanted to just slightly increase the surface area at the bottom. The main reason for that is because obviously we are on gravel, it's not 100% flat and solid. And this is just going to kind of level that area out and just give the pedestals a better base to sit on. So very simple, just slide it under the pedestals, make sure they're wound down tight onto the pads, and that's going to make this really nice and secure. Obviously, if you want something like concrete, this is completely unnecessary. You could just go straight down with the pedestals. But there you go. This is with all the pedestals on, with all the rubber mats down. And I'm just going to walk across it now, and you can actually see there's no flex at all. Obviously, we're using 4x2, which is nice and strong. The span here is only 1800 millimeters. We have the noggins down the middle. We have all these pedestals holding it up. So this right now is actually really, really solid. And the great thing is we've got really nice airflow underneath. Any drainage that comes from the sauna is going to be able to drip down into that gravel. And it's just a better option than having it sat straight on the gravel. Okay, so the next job here was putting the plywood on top. You can see that I've recruited Stanley to give me a little hand here, just to lift these over. And due to the fact that the base itself is 2.4 meters long, just like a sheet of plywood, and I also have that row of noggins, this does fit quite perfectly without any adjustment. The only thing that I do need to do is cut the next sheet. You can see me and Stanley are here with our PPE on, making sure we're not breathing in any of that dust. Stanley's not getting any in his eyes. And, you know, I obviously advise that you do the same thing if you're cutting any sheet materials. Okay, so once that's cut, we can bring that over and pop that on as well. Pretty straightforward here, nothing overly complicated. And again, it is the right length, just like the other one. Stanley's just going to pop that up, get it nice and flush. Now, the ply that I'm using here is a 12mm ply. Usually I would have used an 18mm ply. However, I'm going to be building the floor up inside and creating a slope. So I think this is completely adequate at this stage. There we go. Happy with that. Job well done. So the next job is to actually fix this down. You can see that I'm just going across the corners there, getting a couple of decking screws in. And then me and Stanley are just going to mark across with the level, just to ensure that we make sure we're hitting all the joists here. So it's just a case of putting the level on, marking a line across, and then I can just go across the entire deck with the decking screws. Pretty straightforward, about 5 in each joist. And once that's done, we have a finished base. So I've got to say, guys, I'm pretty happy with this. It's absolutely bang level if you look at it across the width of it. And then if we look at the length of it as well, perfectly level. So not looking bad at all. And, you know, I do think this is actually a really, really good option. You know, whether you're going to be putting a shed on it, maybe you're going to put, you know, table and chairs on it. I don't know, maybe a hot tub. It really would work for anything. But for me, it is going to be for a sauna. And this is a project that I'm really, really looking forward to, guys. I hope you're looking forward to it. If you're not already subscribed, subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos. And I will see you in the next video.